So I think a few things that come to mind are, I'll be honest, like the influence scene in Kansas City has expanded a lot over even the last couple of years. And so everybody probably has that moment where they're like, oh my gosh, how many other people are doing what I'm trying to do, right? And so the best thing that you can do is one, just obviously organically, you have to love doing it, because I think sometimes people think that social media is like, oh, put a little caption together, put a little video together and like put it out there. There's a ton of work that goes into it, as you are obviously well aware. When you have to edit and you have to curate the story or the caption or the text, whatever you're putting together, it takes a ton of man hours collectively to do that. And so I think you have to really love it to do that too. I think being completely authentic is huge. Like, I'm very grateful. I think part of it is because I'm not really putting myself out there too much, or maybe it's our market, but I'm grateful that I haven't had a lot of, people being critical of what I'm doing, because I think that could be a very difficult situation of people coming after you or criticizing you or whatever you're putting together. And so I think even if that does happen, you have to authentically be yourself, and you have to show Kansas City in this case, in, from your perspective. And the more you stay consistent with that, consistency is huge. Keep at it, and people will continue to follow you, for more. I think like people just continue following people for the content that they're creating. And I think that original content is a big part of it too.
Hi there. Welcome to the Connecting KC podcast. I'm Rachel.Kilmer, also known as Rach the Realtor on the internet, where I love, connecting all things KC. I'm a metro area real estate agent, retired sports reporter, and mom. And probably too old to call myself a TikToker, but honestly, that's how we got here. You can learn more at www.ReeceTheRealtorKC.com. But this show is all about introducing you to all of the movers and shakers, interesting people, heartfelt stories, and funny quirks that make this vibrant community home. So let's get right to it with today's episode of Connecting KC. Welcome into today's episode of Connecting Kansas City, where I am joined by, maybe her face isn't familiar to you, but her content most certainly is. Today, we are welcoming Mindy Hargesheimer of Kansas City Bucket List to the show. She says that every day is on my bucket list is a mantra that she lives by, and the basis for her passion for all things experiential. As an avid explorer, Mindy loves taking every opportunity to experience her surroundings inside and out. And when she can't travel the globe, she loves to travel her way around Kansas City and beyond, crossing each and every destination off of, you guessed it, her bucket list. There isn't a day that goes by that she doesn't think about how she can pursue something new and fulfilling in her surroundings and document it through her love of photos and writing. Mindy's other cherished titles are wife to Dan and mom to daughters Liv, 10, and Ellen, 7. She enjoys some of her journeys alone and some of them with her bucket list loving family. She believes the Midwest is a hidden gem in which she loves to learn and share the stories of how our local makers and entrepreneurs launched their vision. So follow along at Kansas City Bucket List as Mindy seeks out all the experiences to be had and strives to inspire others to keep life fun. Mindy, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. And as you're reading that, I'm like, wow, I should probably maybe consolidate that a little bit more. That's a lot of information, but it hopefully tells the story.
I love it. I have followed you on Instagram for quite some time, but your content it's beautiful. I love it. It's great. But I didn't know you. So I was really excited to know you, the person behind the content. How did this journey begin for you? When did you start posting this kind of content online?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to get to know you too. I started looking back at all the episodes that you've done, and congratulations on all of the accolades that you've earned and having a local podcast. It's incredible. Yeah, so the short story is that I was looking for a creative outlet. And when my husband and I moved here, and our daughter Liv, who's now 10, she was 1.5 at the time. But when we moved here from Chicago, we moved to be closer to family and cost of living and everything. But I actually kind of got the itch to do something creative. And we were exploring Kansas City a lot, like we loved to do when we lived in Chicago. And I started realizing that we were doing a lot that people hadn't heard about before, just talking to friends and family. And then I think I started learning a bit about kind of this influencer world of people creating content to share with other people. And it just kind of clicked that I think I should start something. I love taking photos and telling stories, and, I love travel and experiences. And so all of that came together of almost like a traveling locally around Kansas City. And actually it took me about 6 months to finally kick it off. I was like, maybe it's too late. but went ahead and did it. And it's been an amazing 7 years now. I love it.
I figured it had been a while because you were really the first one I remember making like Kansas City specific content. At the time, did you see other people doing this in other markets? And is that what kind of gave you the confidence that it would work? Or like, what was the vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's interesting. Like when I lived in Chicago, I didn't see people doing anything like that. But when I moved here, one, I had a couple of friends who were kind of dabbling in their own content creation, but they lived in different cities. Like one was doing floral arrangements as an example. But then when I started looking online here, I did see a few that are still around, but they were very focused on like food or coffee or like fashion. And at the end of the day, I was like, I love to do all the things. Like I love to go to live music. I love art festivals. I love, a staycation. I like to shop. I like to go to fashion shows. And so it just kind of occurred to me, like, why not do it all? And I literally had a personal kind of motto or mantra that I had come up with, which I still live by, which is every day is on my bucket list. And I came up with that in Chicago. And it was really more of just a commitment of like, I want to live an amazing life. I want to learn something new every day. I want to do something fun every single day. And so that's where the name came from, to really focus on Kansas City. And we moved here at an amazing time when things really started to like bubble up and a lot was expanding here and all the excitement of, Chiefs and the food scene and all these things were happening. And so, yeah, that's a big part of it too. So, but I decided all categories is what I wanted to focus on.
So were you surprised when you came to Kansas City, like how much there actually is to do here coming from a major metropolitan area like Chicago?
Yeah, I was. I went to KU. I graduated from KU in 2001. So I lived in Kansas City for about a year and a half, 2 years after that. But that was pre-Power and Light. That was pre-River Market. I mean, at the time, it was like you go to the Plaza or you go to Brookside or you go to like Tanner's in Overland Park or something like that, right? But I ended up moving to Chicago. And then, of course, we moved back. And I mean, that was where we started discovering, like, I remember one of the first memories of somebody being like, how did you hear about that place? We went to the J. Rieger Distillery, but it was before it was what it is today. So it was like the original before it was this grandiose, amazing, facility that they have today. And so, yeah, we were surprised, and then it just kept growing from there. Like Mahomes was not doing what he was doing when we moved in 2016. And it's just like everything just started to unravel. And I truly feel like so grateful and have been so excited to be a part of this for the last 7 years because there's just so much to do and share. Yeah, it's a hidden gem, still as a market.
100%. I'm a real estate agent. And so I get a lot of people here from out of state and they're always blown away by, they always fall in love with it. And it's so fun to watch. How has your content strategy changed over the last 7 years? Because the internet has changed a lot going from still photos to video is king now. How was that for you, and was that kind of hard for you to adjust to kind of the new trending content online?
Yeah. I think it's been a learning curve the whole way, right? Like I will tell you, I love beautiful photography. I love art, right? So like when it started moving more into video creation, I was like, oh man, like I'm not a videographer. I don't really know what to do. You get to the point where you kind of have to do it. TikTok started to take off, especially during COVID. I still don't do TikTok. Instagram is the only platform that I do. But clearly that influenced everything that we need to be doing as content creators. So of course I make more video. But, truth be told, I love a good carousel of photos, or I love a carousel of both photos and videos. I make the reels and those are really fun and interactive as well. But it's just a lot of trial and error. You just don't know what's going to resonate or what's going to hit or what the algorithm is going to do someday. So that's been a part of it, but that's kind of the fun of it too. Like it's almost a new challenge every day of like, what's going to hit. I think the other thing is too, when I first started it, I truly felt a need to commit to like, I have to be everywhere. I have to do everything and I have to try everything. I'm married to my husband, Dan. We've got 2 kids that are 7 and 10. We now have a dog. I have a full-time job and you just only have a certain amount of capacity, right? And so I think the biggest thing is I had to learn how to pare down or pull back on wanting to do it all. I still want to do it all. It's just like you literally can't do it, right? Your mental, physical, emotional capacity cannot handle it all. And so I do have to pick and choose a little bit more, so that changed the content a little bit just to be a bit more strategic about where I can put my time and to make sure it's the things that are most important to me, my family structure, my husband or kids, things like that.
Mm-hmm. how do you pick and choose? Like, what do you have? Like, are there certain like categories where like, okay, I want to hit like a food thing, an activity thing, and a sports thing this week? Or like, how do you kind of determine the flow of your content and what to go to and what to like can wait until a later date?
That's a really good question. I would say asking me today, I think a big part of it is I have kind of like a mental ROI. And I really have to think about like, what is the return on investment for me where it is meaningful to me or to me and my husband or to our family of 4 or, 5 with our dog? Like, what are the things that really benefit us the most when it comes to an experience like we know we don't want to miss, would be super fulfilling for us? I mean, to some degree, you have to be selfish about finding the things that are going to, compensate you in the ways that are either emotional. Yes, I do paid partnerships as well. So you do have to balance that. But I would say a bigger thing too is I also have a brand that I want to upkeep as well, right? And so I do almost everything hyper local naturally, but when it comes to eating out every single night or doing events every night, like, that can take a toll on you physically or mentally. And so I think really right now, I would just tell you it's back to that. What is going to be the return for us as a family or for me as an individual to make sure it was the best use of my time and that I really learned something, made a great connection out of it. I will tell you, networking is like my favorite thing with this. Obviously, we're doing that now. I absolutely love meeting new people and understanding how they got into the business, how we can work together moving forward. And so, yeah, I mean, it can be tough, and sometimes I feel bad that I can't, do all of it or be everywhere, but it's just the nature of the beast of you only have so much time, truly.
For sure. Yeah, I'm also a working mom. And so I totally get it. It's like, I always do this thing in my head of like, okay, what is my like hourly rate that I would be earning if I was, and like, is that a good return on time? Can I hire someone else to do that for me? Is this, and then there's also like the non-financial, like, okay, is this a good investment in my emotional connection with my kid or like whatever? So it's such a.
To that point, I mean, like, I feel really fortunate that our daughters get to do a lot of cool, fun things in Kansas City. And that has always been, but has become even more of a priority to say, I want to make sure I'm not taking up too much of their time going downtown and doing something when they might want to be back playing with friends in the neighborhood. But at the same time, they get to do some pretty cool cultural things here that introduce them to a variety of things in life. And I think that I look at that as like an educational opportunity as well as a place that they could find inspiration, for things that they never knew they would love, if they hadn't gone to something like that. So.
Yeah, it's funny. That was actually what I was going to ask you is, has your content evolved with your kids as they've aged through different stages of life? Like when they're little, doing the first videos, and then now you're doing more I don't know, Science City. Like, has that evolved grown up?
Yeah, it has, and it's interesting, like talking about it, sometimes people don't even know that I have kids because you don't necessarily see them on my feed a lot. They're there. Like I actually had somebody the other day that was like, oh my gosh, I follow you. And I was like, oh, do you recognize me or the dog? Because we were down at Cornucopia at Power and Light. She's like, no, I recognize your daughter. And I was like, oh. So of course I told my daughter and she was kind of like embarrassed that like, oh, meet little me, but I do think that like family friendly content has definitely become important more so than it even was before, just because like they can truly interact and they can get something out of it more than they could have, obviously 6 years ago when they were much younger and wouldn't have that memory. But I do also do a ton that have nothing to do with, it being family friendly forward. And it's more about the date night or it's more about the event that's 21 and over and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think there's a lot that I look for those, like I said, rewarding cultural events and things that they can do or trying a new cuisine. I want to incorporate them as much as possible because again, family first and foremost is what I'm doing. They get to benefit from it aside from that.
For sure. It's, I create content primarily on TikTok. So we're like counterparts here. I don't really involve my daughter a lot. And it's almost because like, I don't want to create like mom content. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like I want to create content about my life, but like I'm a mom, but I'm also so many other things. Like, have you struggled to find that balance of like, yes, I want to do things that my kids will enjoy, but like, I also am an entrepreneur and I also am Mindy and the human, how do you keep that as well?
Well, so I think to that point, that's probably inherently one reason that my account isn't completely family forward. I think, so I mentioned, or maybe we talked about it before, but my full-time job is I work at City Lifestyle. We are a beautiful magazine company. And what I do here is I work with our editors around the country. We work on trading on things like social media, telling stories in the magazines, giving them ideas. And then we have a team here that helps people across the country just basically putting together their magazine. I absolutely love my job. And I do this Monday through Friday. I come into our office in Midtown Monday through Friday. And I've always said, especially starting Kansas City Bucket List literally 7 years ago, I said, I'm a wife. So let's see. I've got family. I've got my professional job, and then I've got my content creator job. I don't remember exactly how I put it, but I was like, I wear these different hats, but I get so much like value and fulfillment from them in different ways. So obviously family is pretty straightforward. My job here, I get to pretty much live and breathe what I love. It's like basically content creation within my full-time work. And then of course, Kansas City Bucket List doing the content creation there. And I actually got my full-time job because of here. I got connected back to networking that way. So I think that I love the opportunity to balance the three and kind of jump in and out of each world at different points. And I find a lot of joy in being able to do that too.
So cool. Did you have a background in marketing, or like how did you end up in this world?
No, not at all. So actually, my background has been in sales. So when I moved, after I graduated from KU, I worked for like a small advertising agency here. But then I moved to Chicago. I ended up living in Chicago in total for 13 years, but I worked in sales there at a few different organizations. When we moved back to Kansas City in 2016, I continued to work in corporate sales, but I was reaching a burnout mode. It's tough. Sales is really tough. It's great money, but it's very stressful, a lot of expectations, that kind of thing. So creating Bucket List was my creative outlet. I found that I had a true passion for this content creation, branding, marketing, social media thing. And so I organically just learned it through that. I don't have a degree in it. I haven't professionally worked in it. I was lucky enough to get connected with City Lifestyle through Bucket List and then start getting into full-time work with social media and learning more about the marketing and branding side. So I'm very grateful for that because no, I didn't do that, in a full-time job or degree or anything.
I think it's so interesting. I think so much of marketing is like instincts. Like you either have it or you don't. I see that in my too. As a real estate agent, it's like, to me, it just is the kind of second nature. And I see a lot of people, I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, they just don't get it. Like people, you just have it or you don't,
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. We talked a little bit about kind of the rise that Kansas City's on, like right as you got here. But now, 7 years later, it's like only picking up more steam and more momentum. How does that feel to kind of be at the forefront of like content creation, like almost a Kansas City spokesperson, showcasing everything that is going on in this city as part of your job, really?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I cannot tell you how much I love it. I mean, this is like a side hustle for me, but it's a passion project. It's a hobby. And I truly feel so fortunate that I found this kind of hobby to do that is so fulfilling for me. I think that we are so fortunate to have moved here at a time when this is happening. No one could have planned that, like I said, we moved here right before the Chiefs became really what they are. And so we're living in this incredible moment of time that I know will be fleeting on some level because eventually, Travis Kelce's going to retire and do his Hollywood thing. And then Mahomes will do whatever, he ends up doing. But like we are thriving in this market right now because my husband and I both love, and of course, incorporating our kids, because we are such experiential people. And because I have created this amazing, outlet to tell the story of a new restaurant opening up or a brewery or, whatever's happening around town with different events and stuff like that. We're fortunate to be able to attend these things. We'll get invited or we'll go. We get to do so much in the city and experience it firsthand. And then I get the kind of thrill or joy of being able to share my firsthand experience through the photos and the videos and the storytelling of the caption. And I just really authentically like live and breathe that. And it's such a blast. And so like, I couldn't be more grateful that we get to go try all the different things happening in the city right now. I think some would say like, when do you sleep? Kind of joke, right? And sometimes I do feel that, but I also just love it. I look forward to the next thing every day. It's so fun.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you have for someone that's trying to get into the content creation game here in 2024? It's a completely different beast than when you first started, but what tips, tricks would you give to someone?
Yeah. So I think a few things that come to mind are, I'll be honest, like the influence scene in Kansas City has expanded a lot over even the last couple of years. And so everybody probably has that moment where they're like, oh my gosh, how many other people are doing what I'm trying to do, right? And so the best thing that you can do is one, just obviously organically, you have to love doing it, because I think sometimes people think that social media is like, oh, put a little caption together, put a little video together and like put it out there. There's a ton of work that goes into it, as you are obviously well aware. When you have to edit and you have to curate the story or the caption or the text, whatever you're putting together, it takes a ton of man hours collectively to do that. And so I think you have to really love it to do that too. I think being completely authentic is huge. Like, I'm very grateful. I think part of it is because I'm not really putting myself out there too much, or maybe it's our market, but I'm grateful that I haven't had a lot of, people being critical of what I'm doing, because I think that could be a very difficult situation of people coming after you or criticizing you or whatever you're putting together. And so I think even if that does happen, you have to authentically be yourself, and you have to show Kansas City in this case, in, from your perspective. And the more you stay consistent with that, consistency is huge. Keep at it, and people will continue to follow you, for more. I think like people just continue following people for the content that they're creating. And I think that original content is a big part of it too. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, last couple of questions I ask everyone that comes on the show. The first one I am dying to hear your answer on. It is, what is a great meal that you've had out and about recently in Kansas City?
It's so funny. I tell people all the time, I'm like, just when I think I've eaten at, like, you would think I've eaten at every restaurant in the city, and I have not. There are still so many that are on my bucket list, literally. So best meal, gosh, that might be a trick. What's funny is sometimes I'll go back and look at my Instagram and be like, where was I recently? Can I tell you some of my favorite restaurants that I've been to recently? Okay. I would tell you some of my favorite restaurants that I've been to recently are, of course, which is out in South KC. I would tell you the Antler Room, Corvina Supper Club. Those are a couple of my favorite restaurants that I've been to recently. And then there's many more. Like, I love Rock Hill Grill. Gosh, what else? There's just so many. But those are probably a few of my favorites. I like the patio at Graham and Dunn on the plaza. So, yeah.
Kansas City is such a great food town. And I don't think people, like, outside, you wouldn't think that, right? But like, it really is. I had a guest recently, it's been a while, and I asked her that question, and she said Twin Peaks. I was like, okay.
To each their own.
I don't. So they obviously have customers, and you're one of them.
I guess they do. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So I actually created a guide to Kansas City, and it's international cuisines. So to add more flavor to this, if you will, one of my favorite things to do is to try all the different cuisines that you can get from around the world, but right here in Kansas City. So I could tell you, that's why it's so hard for me to say, because there's so many amazing little pockets, or a divey restaurant or something in the middle of a strip mall that has such amazing food. Like Casey Thai is one of our favorite places. We love to eat out in South KC. We get carry out from there all the time. She's got a few restaurants here, but we do have a really amazing international, influence too with food.
For sure. Okay, last question is, where can people find you? Obviously, we know Kansas City Bucket List on Instagram, but if they want that guide, where do they find that? How do they get in touch with you and consume as much of your content as possible?
Yes, great question. Okay, so yes, on Instagram, you can find me at Kansas City Bucket List. I do have a website where I house a lot of the guides that I create to Kansas City. That's one of my favorite things to do, is put together guides when people are looking for kind of that roundup of, where to go to brunch, things like that. My website actually is connected to citylifestyle.com. As I mentioned, that's where I work, and I create my guides on the platform of citylifestyle.com. So if you went to that website, you would also find my guides there, as well as other content that they create too.
Love it. Well, Mindy, thank you so much for putting so much amazing content out into the Metro, and for taking the time to be here on the show today. I really, really appreciate it. And everyone, go follow, if you're not already, which most people are, at Kansas City Bucket List on Instagram.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yep, you bet. Guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.